boys and girls. Welcome to Cheehaw. We are so sad that we couldn't visit you in person, but luckily we are able to bring the show to you. So Cheehaw, we are a park and zoo in Albany, Georgia, and today I have brought 4 different critters that we would love to share with you. Now the animals we're about to see are part of our education collection. So these are the animals that go to schools, libraries, and visit everybody all throughout the state so that we can teach people all about animals, science, and nature. Now normally when I do programs, I like to start with my smaller animals and work my way bigger. So that's exactly what we're gonna do today. And the first critters that we're gonna see are some of my favorite ever since I was a little bitty child. I used to collect them all the time and learn about them and release them back into the wild. Now the ones we're gonna see today, you've probably never seen before because they come all the way from across the world in Australia. So my first friends are frogs. So boys and girls, when you're looking at them, you're probably noticing that they're a lot bigger than the ones you might have found outside. So these are splendid tree frogs, and they get their name because of their beautiful splendid pattern. So they've got this pretty green with these lovely yellow spots speckled across their backs. Now you'll notice I said tree frogs. So when I turn them around, you'll notice that these frogs have got these sticky little toe pads. And these sticky little toe pads are what help them grip. And now, different from something like a gecko or a lizard that might climb, these toe pads are like little suction cups, whereas our geckos that you might find outside of your house have actually little hairs on the insides of their fingers that help them to grip really smooth surfaces. Now, similar to the native species of frogs, these guys have in common with our tree frogs that like to live outside, maybe even in your own backyard. They are all insectivorous. What does that mean? If it's an insectivorous animal, that means it eats insects or bugs. And that's why I love having frogs and other types of amphibians at my house, is because they take care of all those nasty little bugs and those little mosquitoes. So they're very helpful animals to have around your house. On top of that, when you look at the outside of their bodies, I'm gonna take the top off. We're gonna make sure they don't hop out on me. But I'm gonna take the top off so you guys get a nice close view of our frog. And if you look at his back, you'll notice that he looks really, really slimy. And that's because frogs actually have a special coating on the outside of their body that makes them that slimy color or that slimy look. And that slime helps to protect him. So this frog right here has super, super thin skin and can actually absorb toxins or chemicals if it touches his back or the outside of his skin. So that's what that slime does, is that slime actually helps to protect him. It acts kind of like antibiotics. So it makes sure that this guy can stay happy and healthy. Now that slime also has another purpose. This is so cool. So boys and girls, if this frog keeps his skin moist or wet, he can actually breathe through it. So that's another thing that slime helps him do. That slimy layer helps him actually breathe through his skin. Oh, we've got an escapee over here. Got to put him back. And you'll notice that when I'm pushing him back in, that I'm not holding him and I'm not putting my hands around him. And that's because I don't want to remove that slimy coating. Because if I remove that slimy coating, it makes it really hard for him to breathe. So that's why we're not handling these guys directly. We like to keep them in their container just like this. Now, if you are outside and you're like me as a kid and you like to collect frogs and look at them and learn all about them, that's perfectly fine. You just want to make sure that before you do that you wash your hands. You also want to wash your hands afterwards, because all frogs and toads have another way of protecting themselves. On the outside of their skin, all over their backs, they actually have a small layer of poison. Now, if I were to lick this frog, I'm not going to roll over and die right here. But that poison may be enough to give me a tummy ache, or like your cat or your dog. So that's why if your cat or dog has ever gotten a hold of a frog or a toad outside, sometimes they come back and they're like, it tastes terrible. And you'll see them like foaming at the mouth. It's because it gives these frogs and toads a really bitter taste. Now, one of the last ways that these guys protect themselves And be forewarned, so if you're like me and you like to go outside and catch those froggies and toadies, ooh, he just did it right there. The other way that they protect themselves is they pee on you. Now, that may sound absolutely disgusting, but you know what? If you think about it, it's a pretty good way to protect yourself, right? So, you know, like if your older brother is like holding you down and tickling you or something, you could pee on him. He'd probably let you go real quick, wouldn't he? Great way to protect yourself from predators. All right, so I'm going to put my amphibians up, and we're going to pull out another animal. Now, this next animal is not from around here. This animal comes all the way from South America. So we're going to say wave bye to my tree frogs. And then we're going to grab my next critter, like I said, coming all the way from South America. Now this guy is actually a new animal that we're about to see. So he's a little bit jumpy and he's a little bit nervous around people still. So that's why when I'm grabbing him, you'll notice that I have a snake hook. Not so that I can hook him or pin him, but so that I can just pet him and gently know like, hey, I'm here and we're just here to hold you. And now in front, if you look at this right up front, you may notice and be able to guess exactly what we're about to pull out. Boys and girls, what is that from? That is from a type of reptile. And that type of reptile is called a snake. So right now, he's actually grabbing a hold of part of his enclosure or container. And boys and girls, you have probably figured out exactly what type of reptile we're looking at. Boys and girls, this is a snake. It's a sneaky little snake. It's a friendly snake. Boys and girls, this is Jake. Now, Jake the snake here is a red-tailed boa. And the reason that he gets his name, red-tailed boa, is because of the color of his tail. Now, it's a little hard to see that red coloration right now, but as he gets older, he'll develop a darker, more pretty red color. So like I said, this is actually Jake's first outing. When we first get animals, they go through a process called quarantine. And basically what that means is we don't like to handle them or let them get around any of our other animals in the collection. And we do this so that we can make sure that the animals don't have any diseases or sicknesses that they could potentially bring to the rest of our other animals. So Jake went through a 30-day quarantine in which during that quarantine we actually collect fecal samples. So basically we collect their poo. And when we collect their poo, we test it for those diseases or those parasites that I was talking about. And once we can ensure that that animal doesn't have anything that might make him sick or any of the rest of our animals sick, then we bring them out and we get to start using them for programs. Now, I love using snakes to teach about because I know that these animals can sometimes give people the heebie-jeebies, but snakes are actually a really, really important animal in our environment, even here in South Georgia, and actually especially here in South Georgia. One of the main things that we do down south, and we do it quite well, is that we grow lots and lots of food. So our farmers that live here in Georgia grow food for not just Georgia and this region or other states, but they grow food for places across the world. And snakes are extremely important because what they do is they actually go through and they will eat some of the rodents. So these would be animals that might like to eat or taste our tasty little crops. So, you know, all those rats or mice that might like to grab a hold of some of our crops like peanuts or pecans or soybeans. Snakes are going to be important in making sure that those rodents stay under control. So he's getting a little bit nervous, so we're going to go ahead and put him back, but we're going to be able to continue our snake talk. So I'm going to put him back in his cooler. He did really, really, really well for his first outing. And that's one of the important things that we like to do when we're using our animals for our programs is we want to make sure that we work on their comfort level. We don't want to push them too far, too fast. We always want to make sure that our animals have a nice and comfortable life. So in front of me, like I was saying, is actually the skin and scales from a snake. And we were saying how important they are to things like agriculture, because snakes eat all those mice and rats that would potentially eat the crops that we grow. Now, for those people that are afraid of snakes, the reason for that is typically because we do have venomous snakes in the state of Georgia. So we actually have 6 species of venomous snake out of 40. So out of 40 different types of snakes, only 6 of them could potentially harm us. So that's not very many snakes. Now the good thing is, snakes, they want to stay away from us. They're actually really afraid of us because we could potentially hurt them. So if you see a snake outside, you don't have to run and you don't have to scream. The best thing to do, I tell people, is to stop, take 3 steps away, and then walk. And you don't have to run, you don't have to scream. You just stop, take 3 steps backwards, and you can walk away. And now kids, if you do see a snake, I do recommend that you tell a grown-up so that a grown-up can help you determine whether or not it is potentially a dangerous snake. Now, why is it that snakes don't want to hurt us? Well, think about it, boys and girls. Snakes can't eat us. Even the biggest snake in the state of Georgia can't even eat us. So they really don't want to bite us because then they're gonna waste that venom. All right? And then plus, if they were to get close enough to us that they could bite us, they know that they could also get hurt. So like I said, snakes are an incredibly important part to our environment, and the best thing that we can do for them is to leave them be because they help us. Now my next animal is something that we were actually just talking about. So we saw an animal that's slimy, then the next one we saw was a little bit scaly, and the third animal we're gonna see is a little bit fluffy. Now, because I am going to be handling a fluffy animal, and hopefully when you guys heard fluffy animal, you immediately thought mammal. If you thought mammal, then you are correct. So because I'm gonna be handling a mammal, I'm gonna be putting on a mask and gloves so that we can make sure we keep our zoological collection completely safe. So here at Cheehaw, we take not only our guests' safety in mind, but we also want to make sure that we take into consideration the health and safety of our animals. So these critters that we are about to meet here, I have Bruce Banner and Peter Parker here to save the day. Now, for those of you who are looking and going, oh my goodness, ew, that's so gross, they're rats. Okay, rats are not super gross. As a matter of fact, these rats groom themselves more than your kitty cat. So they spend multiple times every day cleaning every single inch of their body. Now, these are domestic rats, which means that they have actually been bred to be pets. So these are not the rats that you would find outside in the wild. These are specifically bred to be pets for people, and they actually do make great pets. So sometimes when I do these programs, I pull out animals that may not make a great pet. For example, the snake that I just had. That snake probably wouldn't make a great pet for most people, not but because he's a snake, but because that snake that I just pulled out was a baby and can grow this big. It can grow 10 feet. These rats make great pets. They're social animals, so that means that they actually like to be around people. They like attention. They like affection. So they like to be pet and touched. Now, something else really cool about rats, not only are they social, but they're also super, super smart. So these rats here are so intelligent that they can problem solve. They can figure things out. We actually have mazes that they run back at home. We use mazes for enrichment, which is basically enrichment is how we keep our animals entertained. Now, these guys are so smart. Believe it or not, over in Africa, they actually have really, really large rats that they train to sniff out bombs. How cool is that? These animals are so smart that they can use them to sniff out bombs. On top of that, there's also a growing trend to use rats kind of like we use dogs for medical issues. So you know how there's dogs that help people if they might have seizures or diabetic issues? Well, they're actually using rats now and doing studies to use rats to help people so that people know if they're about to go into a diabetic shock or have a seizure or anything along those lines. Now, when you're looking at this rat, you'll see that he's got some special characteristics to help him survive. This is a nocturnal animal, so that means he likes to come out at nighttime. That's when he's going to forage. He's got big old eyes, big old ears, and then the one thing you probably see going 24/7 is that nose. Rats have a great sense of smell. All right, that's why they can find almost anything in your trash cans outside, is because they have that fantastic sense of smell. So like I said, this was my rat. This here is Bruce Banner. So we have Bruce Banner, Peter Parker, and Tony Stark. They're our little rat heroes. Now, like I said, this is a domestic rat again, so this is a pet rat. This is not a rat that you would find outside. You don't want to go pick up rats and mice that you find outside because they could potentially carry disease. So if you see a mouse or a rat outside, even though they're cute and they probably look fluffy, it's best that you leave them alone. Okay, so we are going to put my fun rat friend up, and we're going to pull out my final animal. Okay, and again, my final animal is going to be a totally different looking type of one. So far we have seen a slimy, then we saw a scaly, we saw a fuzzy just now, and the last animal that I'm going to bring out is a feathery. So can you guess what type of animal you're about to see? Now, this feathery animal that we're going to pull out, she is a special type of feathered bird. This, boys and girls, is a hawk. So this animal, so far we've seen a lot of animals that are not from here in Georgia, but this particular one is from Georgia. This, boys and girls, is a red-shouldered hawk. And Maverick here is being a little scaredy cat. I'm not sure what it is, but something's making her a little bit nervous, so I'm going to walk a little bit away, and we're going to stand over here so that way I can move away from whatever Maverick is nervous about. Now, like I said, Maverick is a red-shouldered hawk, and she is a type of bird of prey. So what that means is she's a meat eater, okay? And there are a couple types of birds that all belong in that bird of prey category. So we know obviously hawks, then we have eagles, we have owls, we have falcons, and we have vultures. So those are going to be my birds of prey. So then you might be wondering, well, what makes a bird of prey special? Why are they put into this category? Birds of prey are categorized by 3 special features. The first one would be these nice big talons that you see here. So these talons are what she's going to use to grab a hold of her food. Okay, the second thing that she's going to use to help her with her food, oftentimes she's going to grab things that are much larger than she can swallow whole. So she has a specialized beak. If you look at that beak, it looks a lot different than like a blue jay or a cardinal, doesn't it? It's because she's not meant to eat little wimpy old seeds. She is meant to eat meat. And that beak and those feet help her to rip apart her food. So the beak and the feet, act kind of like a fork and a knife, are going to be for you. Now the third and final thing that makes this bird really good at what she does and helps her to find her food would be her eyesight. Now, I know all of you are going, well, every bird has eyeballs, duh, they can see. But Maverick here has got fantastic vision. Her vision is so good that she could read you a storybook from a football field away. That's incredible, isn't it? Now, obviously, she doesn't read, but you see my point. So she can see really well to be able to capture her prey. And that's what helped them so much, is they're very visual animals. So that's how they're mostly going to find their food. They're going to find their food by looking out and scanning, you know, a nice big meadow, or in Maverick's case, if you look behind me, this is Maverick's natural habitat. She likes to live in areas with ponds, streams, and wetlands. So the type of food that she's going to typically go for would be things like frogs, toads, some crayfish. They'll go for snakes, and then other small mammals. Those are mainly what she's going to go after. And that beautiful checkerboard pattern, is going to help her blend in when she's in a habitat like that, because as she's flying around, she's going to have to maneuver around trees and limbs and branches. So that checkerboard pattern breaks up her color. That way she blends in a little bit better as she's going through and as she is hunting her prey. Now, I have some special equipment on Maverick, you'll notice, that is helping me to hold her. The first one would be around her feet. Those are called anklets. Then I have got some jesses attached, and it's attached to my glove. Now, you probably figured out why I'm wearing this big, thick glove. This big, thick glove is to protect me from her feet. All right? Then the anklets and jesses are to help me hold on to her. It's just like you would hold on to your dog when you're walking him. So you would probably have like a leash and a collar. I have this equipment because Maverick here cannot be released into the wild. All right? Maverick fell out of the nest when she was a little bitty baby, and somebody found her and thought, man, this is such a cool bird. I'm going to keep it as a pet. Now, you out there are probably sitting there and going, that sounds like a terrible pet. And if you're saying that, you are right. Okay, birds of prey don't make good pets. They're not loving, they're not snuggly, they're not cuddly. They have talons that could potentially hurt you. And how many of you have raw mice, sitting around in your freezer? So you probably don't have what you need to be able to feed her and take care of her. So when that person tried to keep Maverick as a pet, what ended up happening is this bird started to learn that people are like the same type of animal as her. And that's something called imprinting. So with birds, when they grow up, they learn that whoever raises them is mom and dad. So because she grew up like that, if we were to release her into the wild, she wouldn't know the difference between a wild bird and a person. And that could be kind of dangerous, okay? Imagine sitting on your porch and having a bird like this, or even, a bigger bird that comes up and lands on your lap. It's probably going to scare you, could potentially hurt you. And then for Maverick's case, if she doesn't have her parents to help show her how to catch food or what foods are good to eat, what foods are not good to eat, it's going to be really, really hard for her to survive. So for human safety and for this bird's safety, she stays in captivity, which means she lives with us here at Cheehaw. Now that brings me to a really good point. We are in the spring and the summer months now. That means that there are tons of babies around. Okay, and sometimes babies, just like people babies, they're not so good at learning to walk, learning to fly. So a lot of times people will find these baby animals and we think, oh my gosh, this poor baby animal. I need to help it. I need to save it. But sometimes it's not a good thing for us to take them. So what we usually recommend to do is we recommend to leave them be. Moms know what they're doing. Moms are going to come back for their babies. So if you find a baby bird or a baby deer or baby possums out in the wild, it's best to leave them be so that the mom can come back and take care of them. Now, if those animals are truly injured, the best thing that you can do is you can call the Department of Natural Resources and they will help you to find a local rehabilitator that can help this animal and teach it to properly be released back into the wild. So like I said, this is Maverick here. She is our red-shouldered hawk, and she gets her name from those beautiful red shoulders that are on her back. And now I do say her. Some of the animals, we don't know if they're boys or girls, but in Maverick's case, I know for sure that Maverick is a girl because Maverick has laid an egg for us here at Cheehaw. And I think I figured out that she is scared of our big spider friend bear. So like I said, she can be kind of a scaredy cat with some things. Some new things are kind of scary, and apparently it is the spider. So I'm going to go ahead and put Maverick back. That way Maverick can, get over her fear or her little arachnophobia that we have going on here. Boys and girls, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you'll come and visit us. Cheehaw Park and Zoo is open now. A great day trip. We're less than 2 hours away. Come join us, and we hope to see you in person.